There are whispers beneath the desert, faint vibrations that tremble beneath the ancient sands of Giza, like the last heartbeat of a civilization erased. Some say the stones remember, that the Great Pyramid is not merely a monument to eternity, but a veil stretched thin over something older than recorded time. Beneath the limestone casing and the carved hieroglyphs of dynasties long dead, tunnels extend into silence, descending toward chambers unlisted on any official map. Archaeologists have spoken of them in careful tones, their words trimmed of wonder. Yet in the spaces between those words lies something unsettled. There were the sonic anomalies, the magnetic pulses that distorted compass readings near the base. There were stories of sealed shafts that seemed to hum when struck by metal, of chambers where no air should move, yet something breathed. For some, it is only geology and coincidence. For others, it is a forbidden memory, a remnant of an age that predated Egypt itself. Long before Khufu, before the desert was desert, before the Nile had its name. What if beneath the sand, the ruins of a forgotten city sleep, encased in silence so perfect it bends time itself? Welcome to ARCHAEON. If you're drawn to stories like these, the ones that live in the shadows between what we see and what was made to disappear, feel free to like and subscribe only if it feels right, and let me know in the comments where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now. I love seeing our little map of watchers light up around the world. Night drifts over the Giza plateau like a shroud of violet silk, soft and endless. The pyramids rise not as monuments, but as silhouettes against the dim shimmer of a million grains of sand, each one carrying the memory of something older than itself. Wind moves along the base of the Great Pyramid, whispering through the gaps in its stones as though testing their endurance, as though calling to what lies beneath. For centuries, people have stood here and asked the same unspoken question. Was Egypt truly the beginning, or merely a continuation of something that came before? In the late 1990s, when the plateau was being mapped again with ground-penetrating radar, several anomalies were detected deep below the Sphinx and the pyramid complex: voids, acoustic reflections, geometric cavities where there should have been only compact limestone. The Egyptian authorities dismissed them as natural fissures. Yet some of the scientists involved quietly disagreed. The most whispered name among them was Thomas Dobecki, a geophysicist who worked on the project, and later suggested that the patterns of the anomalies resembled artificial chambers. Nothing definitive was published, but fragments of his notes, half lost, half leaked, hinted at a network extending beneath the plateau, aligned with the constellation of Orion in ways that defied coincidence. To most, that is where the story ends, but silence has its own kind of persistence. In 2009, new teams using advanced resistivity scans returned to the same region. The equipment, far more sensitive than that of the earlier decades, picked up what they described as resonant voids, spaces that seemed to reflect low-frequency vibrations. One engineer described it as though the ground itself was singing. Sound, of course, travels differently through the compressed strata of the Giza bedrock. Yet these reflections, faint and rhythmic, carried harmonic intervals almost identical to those used in early sacred chants, recorded within temple ruins further south. There were rumors that ancient Egyptian architecture was not only symbolic but acoustic, that temples, pyramids, and even tombs were tuned like instruments to manipulate vibration. Some archaeologists have rejected this notion as romantic speculation, but others, drawing on acoustic fieldwork within the king's chamber, noted that its granite walls resonate perfectly at 432 hertz, a frequency later mythologized as the harmonic of the earth. Whether by design or coincidence, it means that when sound fills that space, the chamber amplifies it into a deep, almost breathing pulse. What would happen if that resonance connected downward into the cavities below? The local Bedouins speak of a subterranean city, a place where the voices of the dead still move like water. They call it Balat al-Ard, the gate of the earth. Western researchers brushed it aside as myth, but fragments of older Arabic manuscripts, especially those translated from lost Coptic texts, speak of the city below the lion, describing chambers filled with polished stone and columns that reflected light like mirrors. These writings are often dated to medieval periods, but scholars have noted linguistic traces suggesting they were copies of far older sources. In the hush of desert midnight, the idea of a buried city ceases to sound absurd. The Great Pyramid itself contains architectural features that seem designed not for the living, but for transmission. Narrow shafts angled toward the belt stars of Orion and Sirius, as though serving not as passages for the dead, but conduits of alignment, a geometry of intention reaching across epochs. If one imagines those alignments continuing beneath the plateau, the thought becomes difficult to dismiss. What if the pyramid was not the apex, but the beacon above something deeper? In 1935, the British Egyptologist Walter Emery reported discovering sealed stone passages under the Temple of the Serapeum near Saqqara. He described them as impossibly ancient, older than the dynastic burials above them. Yet before his full notes could be published, Emery died suddenly, and the entrances were resealed. His assistants mentioned unusual metallic instruments found embedded in the stone, inscribed with patterns that no one could identify. The artifacts disappeared into private collections soon after. Those details might seem incidental until one remembers that Saqqara and Giza share not just geography, but purpose. Both sites are aligned within a fraction of a degree to magnetic north. Across cultures, magnetic alignment is a recurring motif, from the megalithic sites of Malta to the basalt temples of Baalbek, each carrying a precision inexplicable for their supposed eras. Could the ancients have understood geomagnetism, not as a field to be measured, but as a living current, a force to be harnessed? The Giza Plateau, positioned near the 30th parallel, is a node of this planetary energy line. When those early radar scans hinted at a cavity precisely beneath this axis, some scientists privately wondered whether the ancients chose the site because of what already lay below, not because of what they intended to build above. The sands of Giza conceal as much as they reveal. Excavations, both official and clandestine, have unearthed artifacts inconsistent with dynastic Egypt, tools carved from metals unknown in that era, reliefs depicting celestial maps predating the invention of recorded star charts. A few of these were quietly catalogued in museum basements under the label anomalous finds, but their existence remains contested. To speak of them publicly is to risk ridicule, to be exiled from the polite company of academic orthodoxy. Yet even silence cannot erase the question: how much of Egypt's history is actually its own? There are ancient legends, whispered through the lines of the Hermetic texts, that Egypt was founded by survivors, not of myth, but of memory. The first time, they called it, Zep Tepi, when gods walked with men, when knowledge was given rather than discovered. Mainstream scholars regard Zep Tepi as a metaphor, but to those who read between the lines, it describes an age before recorded time, when the floodwaters had not yet receded, and something of immense power had already been built, then buried. In 1978, while re-examining seismic readings beneath the Great Pyramid, researchers from Stanford University noted anomalies consistent with massive hollow regions extending eastward. They requested further drilling to confirm, but permission was denied. The official reasoning: to preserve the sanctity of the site. Unofficially, some suspected that the Egyptian Antiquities Organization had already known what was there and chose deliberately not to reveal it. What was being protected? The monuments or the narrative surrounding them? Over the decades, independent explorers have claimed to find entrances, sealed doors in the bedrock, water-filled shafts, hieroglyphs depicting stairways descending beneath the surface. Each story ends the same way: intervention, silence, erasure. The Giza plateau has been under constant surveillance, its perimeters restricted, its sublayers unexcavated. It is as if the desert itself guards its secret with the same resolve as those who built it. But perhaps the truth was never meant to be found in stone. Perhaps it is in frequency, the hum that lives inside the rock. Modern engineers working near the Sphinx have reported instruments malfunctioning in certain areas, as if an electromagnetic interference emanates from below. Some dismissed it as equipment error. Others, quietly, collected samples of the rock, only to find traces of quartz aligned in lattice structures capable of piezoelectric response, materials that, when under pressure, generate current. In other words, the plateau may not be passive, it may be alive with charge. If one were to imagine a civilization advanced enough to understand resonance, to carve stone not for shape but for frequency, then perhaps the pyramids are not tombs, but tuning devices. Not relics, but receivers. The underground chambers, if they exist, could be nodes in a planetary system of sound and energy, built not to store the dead, but to awaken the earth itself. And yet, for all its allure, this thought unsettles. Because if something below Giza was once active, what silenced it? Cataclysm or intention? The flood myths of the ancient world, Sumerian, Egyptian, Hebrew, all speak of a cleansing, a reset. Perhaps those who came before sealed their knowledge within the ground, beneath the desert's indifferent breath, waiting for an age when humanity would once again listen. When the wind sighs through the plateau at night, one can almost hear the faint vibration, like the heartbeat of stone. Whether it is mere imagination or something real, no one can say. But it lingers, a pulse felt rather than heard, echoing through the bones of the earth and the walls of memory. Beneath the sand, something waits, not for discovery, but for recognition. Dawn over Giza is never quiet. It arrives in murmurs, in the sigh of cold air retreating from stone, in the rustle of desert wind through papyrus reeds by the old canal, in the slow brightening of limestone, until it glows like the skin of a sleeping god. Yet there is a stillness beneath that motion, a stillness that does not belong to the present. For those who come here with instruments and theories, there is the pyramid as a structure. For those who come with silence in their hearts, there is the pyramid as an echo. In the late 1940s, before modern excavation techniques reshaped the discipline, a small French team led by André Pochon recorded faint subsonic vibrations emanating from the plateau. The equipment they used was primitive, seismic microphones borrowed from oil surveyors, but the readings were clear. The frequencies did not match natural tremors. They pulsed in intervals, as though produced by an artificial resonance. Pochan wrote, "The ground breathes beneath the pyramid, as if something below seeks release." His notes were later filed away by the Cairo Museum, and the study vanished from citation. Still, his phrase, "the ground breathes," would reappear decades later among independent researchers who sensed that what lay below was not empty. Beneath the Sphinx, according to the early geophysical maps, exists a hollow chamber aligned almost perfectly with its chest. Some refer to it as the Hall of Records, a name popularized by Edgar Cayce, the American psychic whose visions claimed that it held the history of a civilization before Egypt. While mainstream scholars dismiss Cayce as fantasy, a curious detail remains. The location he described in trance, beneath the Sphinx's left paw, matches precisely with a subsurface anomaly confirmed by radar scans in the late 20th century. It is easy to mock prophecy until science inadvertently traces its outline. What might be hidden beneath such a guardian? The Sphinx itself is carved from a single mass of limestone, eroded not by wind, as once believed, but by rain, deep vertical water erosion inconsistent with the Sahara's arid age. This detail, first raised by geologist Robert Schoch, ignited controversy. If his analysis was correct, the monument predates the known dynasties by thousands of years, to a period when the Giza plateau was lush and green, long before the first pharaoh rose. Egyptologists rejected the idea, for to accept it would unravel the entire chronology of civilization as we know it. Yet the stone does not lie. It wears its age in the scars of time and water. If the Sphinx predates the Old Kingdom, then who carved it? Some suggest it was a lion before it bore a human face, later reworked by the dynastic rulers to imprint their identity upon an inheritance they did not build. Its gaze, fixed eternally toward the east, watches not only the rising sun, but the precession of the equinoxes, a celestial clock marking cycles of 26,000 years. The ancient builders, whoever they were, seemed obsessed with such alignments. They measured time not in reigns, but in aeons. In forgotten papyri unearthed near Abusir, there are references to the House of the Hidden Chamber, said to be guarded by a lion of stone. The text describes the vault of beginnings, where the light first touched the earth. Scholars interpret it metaphorically, as a creation myth. But when the same phrase appears in both Middle Kingdom texts and older fragments attributed to the priesthood of Heliopolis, it suggests a continuity of memory, a myth retold because it preserved something once real. What if the vault of beginnings was not celestial, but literal? There are old accounts, mostly ignored, of subterranean passages running for miles beneath the plateau. In 1817, explorer Giovanni Caviglia reported entering a series of tunnels near the Sphinx, leading downward before being blocked by collapsed debris. He wrote of hearing the echo of a deep space beyond the stone. Later expeditions searched for these same tunnels, but they were never rediscovered, at least not publicly. Modern excavations, carefully restricted, avoid the precise area Caviglia described. It is as though a decision had been made. The ground beneath should remain undisturbed. Those who challenge that silence often meet resistance not from sand or stone, but from bureaucracy. There are whispered stories of permits withdrawn, of equipment confiscated, of photographs erased. Officially, the reason is conservation. Unofficially, it feels like control, the kind that guards not artifacts, but narratives. For archaeology is not merely the study of the past, it is the power to define where the story of humanity begins. Beneath the plateau, sonar mapping has revealed patterns that resemble grid-like foundations, rectangles and corridors too regular to be natural. Yet when questions arise, they dissolve into politics. The sands of Egypt have always been fertile ground for both discovery and denial. Perhaps the truth is inconvenient, or perhaps it is simply too large to fit within our current understanding. Some researchers, drawing from comparative mythology, connect Giza's mysteries to the flood legends that echo through every ancient culture. In Sumer, the Epic of Gilgamesh speaks of a flood that erased the knowledge of the gods, save for those who hid it, in the foundation of the earth. The Hermetic writings of Egypt speak of Thoth, the divine scribe, who concealed the wisdom of the stars within the stone for a future age. And the Greek historian Herodotus recorded that beneath the pyramids were vaults on which the Nile's waters flow, containing the remains of kings and hidden mechanisms of bronze. Whether he truly saw them or merely repeated temple lore, we may never know. But the pattern is clear, the memory of something preserved beneath, beyond reach. Modern Egyptologists bound by evidence focus on the tangible, artifacts, inscriptions, measurable data, yet sometimes what is absent speaks louder than what remains. The plateau is strangely sparse in hieroglyphs for a site of such significance. No inscription claims the Great Pyramid, no hieratic scroll records its construction. It stands in mute perfection, unclaimed by history, as though built by those who did not need to explain themselves. The absence of names, of ego, suggests a civilization governed not by kings, but by purpose. If one accepts that the Sphinx predates the pharaohs, that its erosion speaks of rain in an age before deserts, then one must also accept the possibility that Giza was not the origin, but the inheritance of a forgotten epoch. Some call this Lost Era Atlantis, others Lemuria, others simply the first civilization. But the name matters less than the question. What knowledge did they possess to carve granite with laser-like precision, to align monuments with celestial mechanics, to build for eternity? In 2010, seismic surveys conducted near the Sphinx registered unusual reflections at depths greater than 30 meters, as if multiple layers of chambers existed beneath the known structure. The data was inconclusive, the report unpublished. But a few sentences leaked from an internal memo described anomalous cavities forming a distinct pattern of symmetry inconsistent with natural geology. The wording was cautious, but the implication was not. Imagine for a moment those chambers, dark, sealed for millennia, filled with air untouched since the dawn of human memory. Within them could lie artifacts that would rewrite history, or perhaps merely silence, a silence that itself would confirm how little we truly know. The ancients may have buried not treasures, but truths, and truth, once buried, can be more dangerous than any weapon. The modern world demands evidence. It fears speculation, mistrusts mystery. Yet there are things that cannot be measured, only felt. Standing at the base of the Sphinx before sunrise, one feels the air grow heavy, as though charged with an unseen current. The desert hums, faintly but undeniably. Perhaps it is imagination, or perhaps the earth itself remembers the song of its builders. If these structures were built to preserve vibration, the pure geometry of sound, then what lies below might not be a hall of records in the human sense, but a harmonic archive. Knowledge encoded not in words or images, but in frequency. The ancients may have understood what modern physics only now rediscovers, that matter is vibration slowed into form, that information can be woven into the resonance of stone. The philosopher mystics of Hermopolis wrote that the universe was spoken into being, that creation itself began as a tone. If that is true, then the Great Pyramid might not be a tomb nor a temple, but an amplifier of creation's memory. Beneath it, the earth may hold the lingering chord of that first sound. Still, such ideas remain heretical in the eyes of modern academia. To propose them is to step outside the sanctioned boundaries of knowledge. Yet boundaries exist to be crossed, as deserts exist to be walked. The real question is not whether these theories are true, but why humanity feels compelled to bury what it once knew. Somewhere beneath the shifting sands, in chambers yet unopened, the echo of a forgotten age waits, not to be uncovered, but to be heard. And perhaps, when the time comes, the earth will sing again through the mouths of its stone giants. Until then, the lion sleeps, and the world above continues to search for beginnings that were never truly lost. The desert does not keep secrets, it absorbs them. Every grain of sand is a record, a whisper of stone against stone, a chronicle of wind and erosion and time. Beneath that endless surface lies a slow memory, one that human beings can neither erase nor entirely understand. Yet there are those who have tried to listen. In 1997, a team of Egyptian and Japanese researchers undertook a joint geological survey of the Giza plateau. Their goal, officially, was to map subsurface layers to assess structural stability. Unofficially, rumors spread that they were searching for something far older, traces of architecture buried beyond reach. Their instruments detected several cavities, rectangular in shape, beneath the Sphinx and near the Great Pyramid. The deepest of them registered clear edges, as if carved or built. When the findings were first presented, the Egyptian Antiquities Authority praised the results, but by the time the full report was released, those rectangular anomalies had vanished from the published diagrams. Some called it a clerical correction. Others suspected deliberate omission. Either way, something was erased. The few surviving photographs from that expedition show a landscape littered with cables, tripods, and antennae like a battlefield of technology facing an ancient fortress. And in the middle of it, the Sphinx watched in silence, its face worn smooth by millennia of wind, patient, unblinking, indifferent. Beneath its paws, the ground trembled faintly under the weight of machinery. One geologist noted in his diary that the vibration meters spiked at intervals, as though responding to a pulse beneath us. Long before the Japanese-Egyptian collaboration, the idea of chambers beneath the Sphinx was not new. In the 1920s, an American engineer named George Reisner reported air currents escaping from fissures near its base. He sealed them for safety, but his notes mention hollow spaces emitting low tones like breath. To most, that sounded poetic. To others, it sounded like a signal. Whispers of an underground labyrinth beneath Giza appear in the writings of the first Greek travelers. Strabo, in his Geographica, described passages and galleries extending below the pyramids. built for the king's secret ceremonies. Herodotus, too, wrote of vaults connected to the Nile, containing the remains of ancient kings and hidden mechanisms. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed as myth until fragments of similar descriptions appeared in Egyptian texts themselves. The Book of the Hidden Chamber, found in fragments at Edfu, speaks of roads beneath the earth, guarded by silence, leading to the first city. It never names the location, but its symbolism, lions, stars, and flooded passages, echoes Giza's own geography. The first city. That phrase has haunted scholars for decades. Some interpret it as a metaphysical origin, the dawn of creation. Others see it as literal, a memory of a physical place where civilization first rose. In Mesopotamia, similar myths speak of Eridu, the city built before the flood. In both legends, knowledge descends from the sky, is stored within the earth, and then lost to water. The cycle repeats. The stories converge. If Giza hides an ancient city beneath it, it would not be the only one. Beneath Teotihuacan in Mexico, radar scans revealed a vast tunnel beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, filled with traces of mercury and spheres of unknown material. Beneath Derinkuyu in Turkey, entire underground metropolises stretch for miles, carved with precision. Civilizations have always looked downward, as if the memory of catastrophe lived in their bones. Perhaps the builders of Giza did the same, creating not just monuments, but vaults against oblivion. In 2012, while reanalyzing archived seismic data from the plateau, geophysicist Amr Kamil noticed a peculiar harmonic distortion. When he isolated the frequency, he found a repeating pattern, a rhythm that mirrored the mathematical ratios of the pyramid's own dimensions. It was as though the structure resonated with something beneath it, forming a standing wave through the limestone bedrock. He published a small note suggesting that the pyramids might function as acoustic couplers between the earth and the sky. His peers dismissed the idea as fanciful, but Kamil, fascinated, returned to the site privately with more sensitive sensors. He reported a resonance peak strongest near dawn, when temperature gradients in the stone were at their thinnest. What does it mean when the earth sings back? Ancient Egyptian texts often refer to sound as power. Words were not symbolic but generative, heka, the act of utterance that brings reality into being. Temples were designed as resonant spaces where chants amplified not devotion, but transformation. When the king's chamber hums at 432 hertz, perhaps it is not coincidence. Perhaps it is memory, a frequency that once connected the surface to the depths. Some have speculated that the buried chambers may contain not scrolls or treasures, but something far stranger. Harmonic devices, instruments of stone and metal designed to preserve vibration. Theorists of archaeoacoustics, studying ancient instruments and architecture, have found that certain materials, granite, basalt, quartz, respond to specific frequencies with almost electronic precision. Within Giza's bedrock, high concentrations of quartz form natural resonators. When subjected to pressure or sound, they generate current, the piezoelectric effect. It is not impossible that ancient builders understood this, even if not through the language of modern science. They may have experienced the earth's voice not through mathematics, but through devotion. But not everyone agrees. Mainstream Egyptology holds that the pyramids were tombs and nothing more. The absence of burial remains, they say, is due to looting. The precision of construction, a matter of labor and patience. The alignments to stars, ritual symbolism, not evidence of higher knowledge. Yet each explanation feels incomplete. To walk through the narrow, slanted corridors of the Great Pyramid is to feel a sense of design that transcends function. The air grows still, the light thins, and sound becomes weight. Even modern visitors describe a pressure in the chest, as though the structure itself hums at the edge of perception. Tombs are built for rest. This, however, feels alive. If there truly is a city buried beneath, what could it have been? One possibility lies in the shifting climate of the ancient Sahara. Geological records show that around 10,000 BCE, North Africa was not desert, but grassland. Rivers, lakes, and forests stretched across what is now barren sand. Then came abrupt desiccation, a rapid climate shift that forced populations towards the Nile. Could an advanced culture have flourished there before the desert's rise, one whose remains now lie entombed beneath dunes? Satellite imaging from NASA has revealed traces of dried riverbeds running directly beneath Giza, suggesting that the plateau was once part of a larger hydrological system. If water once flowed through these channels, it could explain the mysterious vaults connected to the Nile, described by Herodotus. It could also explain why the ancients aligned their monuments with both the river and the stars, as above, so below. There are even theories, whispered more than written, that the pyramids themselves were constructed atop an older ruin. Archaeologist John Anthony West proposed that the base stones show evidence of reuse, as though an older platform had been adapted for a newer structure. The pyramid we see might be a restoration, not a creation. That would mean the true origin of Giza lies deeper still. Throughout the 20th century, scattered reports emerged of tunnels found accidentally by work crews or diggers. Some described narrow shafts lined with black basalt leading downward before vanishing into sand. Others claimed to have seen walls of a strange polished stone that reflected torchlight like glass. Most of these accounts were dismissed or suppressed, their details fading into rumor. But they share one feature, a consistent direction, downward beneath the Sphinx. Why the secrecy? Perhaps to protect the integrity of the monuments. Or perhaps because what lies below does not fit within the accepted story. To unearth something that predates Egypt would challenge the foundation of recorded history. Civilizations define themselves by their origins. To move that origin further back, to an era of forgotten architects, would force us to reconsider everything: religion, progress, identity. And yet, in the silence of Giza's nights, that question continues to hum. The wind moves through the broken stones, and for a moment, one can imagine the shape of a buried metropolis, halls glowing faintly with mineral light, corridors where ancient symbols pulse like constellations. Perhaps it is imagination, or perhaps the earth remembers more than we do. Those who believe in the lost city beneath Giza call it by many names. The Hall of Records, the First City, the City of the Lion. But names are only masks. What matters is the feeling that humanity is older than it believes, that knowledge once flourished and was then buried not out of destruction, but preservation. As if those who came before knew we would one day forget, and left behind a beacon, a hum, a pattern, a geometry, waiting for rediscovery. If that is true, then the story of Giza is not about death, but about continuity. The pyramids are not tombs, but transmissions, and the city beneath them, if it exists, may not be ruins at all, but a sleeping archive, its resonance waiting to be awakened when the world is ready to listen. Until then, the sand keeps breathing. The desert changes its tone when the sun begins to die. At twilight, the sand cools and the plateau exhales. The heat that once shimmered like a mirage fades into a dim copper haze. Shadows stretch along the limestone causeways, and the edges of the pyramids turn soft, like the outlines of dreams just before waking. It is in this in-between hour, when day and night meet in silence, that Giza feels most alive. It is here that one begins to sense that the stones themselves might be listening. For centuries, travelers have described strange sensations near the pyramids at dusk, an untraceable vibration, a subtle ringing in the ears, a pulse beneath the soles of the feet. Some dismissed it as exhaustion or desert mirage, yet others felt it was something deliberate, something woven into the design itself. A hidden hum of geometry, inaudible to those who refused to believe that matter could remember. In the early 1980s, a group of researchers from the Egyptian Geological Society conducted a series of magnetic and acoustic tests along the Giza Plateau. They were not mystics, but scientists measuring minute fluctuations in the Earth's field. Their results were published in a minor technical bulletin, and then quietly forgotten. But in that paper lies a small detail that still unsettles those who read it closely. Near the base of the Great Pyramid, the team recorded alternating spikes of magnetic intensity, not random, but rhythmic, recurring every 22 minutes, as if the stone were pulsing with the planet's heartbeat. The readings matched no known man-made interference and no predictable geomagnetic anomaly. One of the researchers suggested that the pyramid might act as a passive resonator, amplifying microcurrents from deep within the Earth. He was laughed at. And yet, his data has never been disproven. To some, this means nothing. To others, it means everything. When the ancient Egyptians wrote of Ka, the vital essence that animates all things, perhaps they were describing this resonance. The pyramid, then, becomes not a tomb, but a body. Not a monument, but a vessel of living stone. Its angles draw down cosmic energy. Its base anchors it to the telluric currents of the Earth. If one imagines the hidden chambers beneath as organs, tuned cavities, conduits of sound, the entire plateau becomes a living system, half architecture, half organism. This interpretation might sound poetic, but it is grounded in something measurable. Stone, when under pressure, produces sound. Sound, when amplified through the right materials, produces vibration. And vibration, in the ancient worldview, was creation itself. The Hermetic texts, attributed to Thoth or Hermes Trismegistus, insist that the universe is a sound sustained by the mind of the All. To build in resonance was to participate in creation, to mirror the divine act through geometry. If the ancients at Giza understood this, then their monuments were not memorials. They were instruments. But instruments for what purpose? That question has haunted not just dreamers, but engineers. In 2018, an international study analyzed the Great Pyramid's internal structure using infrared thermography. The team discovered unexplained heat variations along its northeastern face, pockets of warmth where the stone should have been uniformly cold. These anomalies suggested hidden cavities or materials with unusual thermal properties. Subsequent simulations showed that the pyramid's shape focuses electromagnetic energy within its internal chambers and at its base. Modern physicists call this phenomenon energy-focusing resonance. It occurs naturally in certain geometries, but can also be engineered. The pyramid, in other words, behaves like an antenna, a design thousands of years ahead of its supposed time. Skeptics argue that coincidence is inevitable in a structure that vast. Yet coincidence has limits. The pyramid's base is aligned to true north within a fraction of a degree, an accuracy unmatched until the invention of modern surveying tools. Its sides are oriented to the cardinal points with astronomical precision, and its proportions encode the ratio of the Earth's circumference to its radius, knowledge that officially should not have existed. Some suggest it is proof of lost mathematics, others that it was guided by a civilization whose knowledge was inherited, not developed. In the archives of the Cairo Museum lies a curious object often overlooked, a fragment of diorite, carved with a pattern resembling a circuit or grid. It was found near the subterranean chamber of the Great Pyramid. Its purpose remains unknown, though its composition, a mix of crystalline quartz and feldspar, makes it a perfect conductor for vibration. When struck, it emits a clear, bell-like tone. No inscriptions accompany it, no explanation is offered. Just a sound waiting to be heard. The deeper one studies Giza, the more the line between archaeology and acoustics begins to blur. In the mid-1990s, sound engineer Paul Horn was granted permission to record inside the Great Pyramid. He played a single flute note inside the king's chamber and captured what he later described as an infinite echo. The tone resonated for nearly 8 seconds before fading into silence. Listeners of the recording describe an uncanny sensation, as though the pyramid itself were responding, its walls singing back. That sound, stretched across centuries, feels like a bridge between stone and soul, between what is known and what is remembered. It invites a question few dare to ask. What if the builders of Giza were not merely human in their methods of understanding, but in their consciousness? What if they built not just to preserve, but to communicate across time itself? There are ancient texts that speak of voices of light, of knowledge written in air. In the pyramid texts of Unas, carved more than 4,000 years ago, we read, "The sky trembles, the earth quakes before the God who rises." Scholars interpret it as religious poetry, but to others it hints at something more literal, an event when sound and light combined to awaken the earth. In this view, the pyramid complex is a machine of remembrance, a harmonic gate through which the planet's resonance and the human spirit were once aligned. Yet not all knowledge endures willingly. Legends among the desert tribes tell of explorers who ventured too far into the subchambers and never returned. Some stories speak of a tone that drives men to madness, a frequency so low it cannot be heard but can be felt in the marrow. Others tell of lights that flicker within sealed corridors, as though reflections of a distant storm beneath the earth. Scientists dismiss such accounts as myth, but local guides still refuse to enter certain areas after dusk. They say the ground hums with warning. If Giza does conceal a lost city, a labyrinth of harmonic chambers built to preserve energy or memory, then perhaps the builders also knew that knowledge, when misused, can destroy. In every civilization's mythos, the theme repeats: a golden age undone by pride, a flood that erases, a reset. The builders vanish, leaving behind symbols that those who come after can neither read nor forget. The pyramids may not be warnings or graves. They may be locks. Beneath the plateau, ground-penetrating radar continues to reveal inconsistencies, voids that appear, then vanish as the sand shifts, as if the earth itself guards its secrets. Attempts to drill or excavate are often halted by sudden collapses or unexplained flooding from below. The Nile's ancient channels still run deep, hidden beneath layers of sediment. Water, the great conductor, still moves through them, and with it, perhaps, the same resonant pulse that has always flowed beneath these stones. One cannot help but wonder if the pyramids were built not merely upon the earth, but with it, tuned to the frequencies of its living heart. In that sense, the city beneath, if real, would not be a city in the human sense, but an organism, a subterranean architecture of energy and memory, the echo of a world before words, when knowledge was vibration, not text. Modern science edges closer to what the ancients may have already known. Quantum theory speaks of entanglement, of information shared across space and time. The physicist might call it coherence, the mystic, unity. To the builders of Giza, it was perhaps neither. It was simply life, the resonance between all things. At night, when the wind stills, the pyramids stand as silhouettes against a sky the color of ash. The stars of Orion hang directly above, mirroring the three great structures below. The alignment is exact, as though heaven and earth were once designed as reflections of each other. And in that reflection, perhaps, lies the secret of the lost city, not buried in sand or stone, but within the vibration that connects above and below, light and sound, creation and memory. If that is true, then the city beneath Giza is not lost. It is asleep, waiting for the right frequency to awaken it. And maybe, when that moment comes, the world will hear what the desert has been trying to say all along. There are nights in Giza when the air seems older than time, when the wind falls silent and even the sand hesitates to move. Those who live near the plateau say that such nights feel different, as if the sky lowers itself until it almost touches the tips of the pyramids. The stars seem brighter then, too precise, too deliberate, like watchful eyes. On those nights, if one stands near the Sphinx, the earth seems to hum, a faint vibration at the edge of perception, as though beneath the desert, something vast is breathing in its sleep. It was on such a night, in 1934, that British pilot P. Groves claimed to have seen a glimmer beneath the sand. He was flying low over Giza under a pale moon, testing navigation lights for the Royal Air Force, when his spotlight caught a strange reflection east of the Great Pyramid. He described it as a grid of faint metallic lines, almost like the roof of a structure buried just beneath the surface. His report was dismissed as illusion, a trick of the desert glare. Yet decades later, satellite imaging over the same coordinates revealed geometric anomalies, right angles invisible from the ground, too regular to be natural. The desert had swallowed them whole. By the 1960s, interest in Giza's hidden architecture returned in waves. The Cold War had driven both superpowers to peer beneath the earth, for oil, for bunkers, for history. Soviet scientists proposed using cosmic rays to detect voids within the Great Pyramid. In 1969, a team led by physicist Luis Alvarez successfully employed muon detectors inside the Pyramid of the Moon in Mexico. When the technique was proposed for Giza, permission was denied. Officially, it was to preserve the sanctity of the site. Unofficially, some whispered that it had already been done, and that the results had never been made public. The theory of the hidden city was reborn in those years, no longer as legend, but as suppressed archaeology. It was said that beneath Giza lay a network of tunnels and chambers stretching for miles, connecting pyramids, temples, and forgotten vaults. Those who believed claimed it was the true underworld of Egyptian myth, the Duat, the realm through which souls traveled to be judged. But what if it was not a metaphysical concept at all? What if the Duat was once a physical place, an underground world of stone and water and light? Ancient texts describe the journey through the Duat as a passage of 12 gates, guarded by serpents and filled with luminous waters. To cross it, the soul required knowledge, the spells recorded in the Book of the Dead. But what if these were not incantations in the magical sense, but coordinates, instructions, frequencies? The ancients may have encoded within myth a map to the real structures below. If sound and vibration governed their world, perhaps each spell was a tonal key, a resonance required to pass from one chamber to another. One papyrus from the Ptolemaic period, now housed in Turin, speaks of the City of Dawn, hidden beneath the feet of the lion that faces the sun. It describes vaulted ceilings studded with stars and rivers of liquid light. Scholars interpret it as metaphor, the soul's journey through the heavens. Yet the imagery is strikingly similar to the reports of explorers who claimed to have entered forbidden passages under Giza in the 19th century. One account by an Arab chronicler, al-Makrizi, mentions a labyrinth of stone halls discovered during a flood, with walls that shimmered as if coated with glass. He wrote that those who entered did not return. The story, once dismissed as fable, echoes with the same unease that haunts every rumor of the hidden city. The deeper one goes into these tales, the more they intertwine with myth and science. Egyptian cosmology held that before creation there was only the Nun, the primordial waters. From this infinite sea rose the first mound, the Benben, upon which light touched the earth for the first time. The pyramid, some say, is a symbolic Benben, a frozen echo of that cosmic moment. If that is true, then perhaps the hidden chambers beneath represent the Nun itself, the waters of origin preserved beneath the solid form of creation. To walk beneath Giza would be to descend into the memory of the universe. In 1988, American archaeologist Dr. James Harris conducted seismic soundings beneath the plateau and detected what he called a deep resonance structure. He proposed that certain areas beneath the Great Pyramid amplified seismic noise, behaving almost like a cavity tuned to specific frequencies. The data suggested vast hollows, possibly interconnected. Harris intended to publish his findings, but his expedition funding was abruptly withdrawn. When he returned years later, the area had been sealed off. "The sand had reclaimed what it wanted," he wrote. Modern excavation rarely speaks of such mysteries. The official narrative remains carefully curated. Pyramids as tombs, the Sphinx as royal symbol, Egypt as the cradle of civilization. Yet there are layers of evidence that resist simplicity. Precision stonework that defies primitive tools, astronomical alignments more exact than chance, and myths that mirror other ancient cultures separated by oceans. The builders of Giza, it seems, shared a knowledge that transcended geography, a geometry of the world itself. Across the sea, in South America, the ancient site of Tiwanaku aligns perfectly with solar and stellar points, just as Giza does. Both structures, though continents apart, reflect Orion's belt in their architecture. The same correlation appears in the ruins of Angkor Wat in Cambodia and in the Neolithic mounds of Ireland. It is as if civilizations across epochs were guided by a single map written not on paper, but in the sky. Some scholars call it coincidence, others call it memory. If this pattern holds, then the city beneath Giza is part of a network, a global architecture built in resonance. The ancients may have understood the earth as a living instrument, its nodes connected through geometry, magnetism, and sound. Each monument, each chamber, each pyramid, a note in the planet's forgotten symphony. Yet if these monuments were once harmonized, something must have silenced them. Some cataclysm, flood, fire, or celestial shift broke the connection. The myths remember it as the Great Deluge, the end of the Golden Age. The survivors, carrying fragments of their knowledge, rebuilt what they could. The pyramids, then, might not be the beginning of civilization, but its echo, the memory of a world that fell silent. In that silence, humanity began again, calling itself new, while walking on the bones of the old. The pharaohs inherited monuments they could not replicate, gods they did not create, and symbols whose meanings had already begun to fade. They ruled in the shadow of something greater, and perhaps that is why they built their own pyramids smaller, more mortal, more human. Among the few who speak openly of these ideas is geologist Dr. Carmen Bolter, who argued that the ancient Egyptian civilization was a fragment of something older, matriarchal, and technologically advanced. Her work, though controversial, revived the question of the forbidden history of Egypt, not as conspiracy, but as suppressed memory. For if the evidence of a pre-dynastic civilization beneath Giza were ever confirmed, every timeline of human progress would collapse. The narrative of evolution, from primitive to advanced, would reverse. And perhaps that is the real secret, that humanity did not rise from ignorance toward knowledge, but fell from wisdom into forgetfulness. The city beneath Giza may not be a ruin of stone, but of consciousness, the physical residue of a civilization that once remembered how to live in harmony with the earth's resonance. What we call myth may be the faint echo of that lost awareness. Every generation believes itself modern, yet every generation also feels the pull of something older, something beneath language. It hums in the architecture we cannot explain, in the symmetry that returns across cultures, in the way music and mathematics touch the same part of the mind. The ancients may have built the pyramids not as messages to gods, but as reminders to humanity, that the earth itself is sacred geometry, that we are not separate from the cosmos, but made of its vibration. And so, beneath the sands of Giza, the hum continues, not mechanical, not artificial, but alive. It is the sound of the world remembering itself. Those who listen long enough hear it not through their ears, but through their bones. Whether one calls it the Duat, the first city, or the forbidden history, its meaning is the same, a descent into the depths of memory where time folds and knowledge waits. Perhaps one day, when humanity is quiet enough, the desert will open again, not to reveal a lost city of stone, but to awaken the city within us that has been buried all along. At dusk, when the sky deepens into the color of pomegranate ash and the first star trembles above the horizon, the Giza plateau exhales. Heat drifts from the stone like memory rising from the skin of the earth. The tourists vanish, the vendors fall silent, and a profound stillness takes hold, as if the land itself were remembering something no one alive can name. In that hush, the Great Pyramid ceases to be a monument. It becomes a presence, an immovable pulse, waiting. There are those who say the plateau was never meant to be uncovered, that it is not merely an archaeological site, but a threshold, one of many across the world, built in accordance with laws no longer understood. Beneath these thresholds, they say, the earth dreams in structures, crystalline tunnels, vaults of black basalt, chambers where vibration is stored like breath in the lungs of the planet. In 1974, a NASA imaging satellite scanning the region for mineral composition picked up faint traces of subsurface geometry, perfectly linear forms beneath the dunes south of Giza. When cross-referenced with ground topography, the shapes aligned with the base of the pyramids, extending toward the Nile. The findings were never publicized in detail. The official summary referred to them as erosional anomalies. But internal memos, later cited by independent researchers, mentioned possible rectilinear voids of non-geologic origin. That phrasing, neutral and clinical, hides a tremor of awe. For in scientific language, non-geologic means one thing: built. If those lines truly indicate buried structures, then they may represent the perimeter of the lost city long whispered about by Bedouin guides, the one they call Zerzat al-Aswad, the Black Foundation. In their stories, it was a city beneath stone, its walls polished like obsidian, its ceilings carved with constellations that shimmered even in darkness. The people who lived there, they say, spoke to the stars through silence. Scholars dismiss the tale as folklore, but every myth begins as a memory blurred by time. The 1970s were also the decade of secrecy. Egypt's Department of Antiquities was under pressure to modernize, to control narratives. Access to the substructure beneath Giza was tightly restricted. Several European researchers who petitioned to conduct surveys were denied, and their correspondence quietly disappeared from archives. Yet fragments survive. Letters written by engineers describing unexplained hollows detected through seismic reflection at depths greater than 100 feet. One of them, dated 1977, mentions a resonance pocket that behaves like a giant cavity. Another, more cryptic, adds, "There is something under the plateau that absorbs frequency." Absorbs frequency. The phrase lingers like static at the edge of hearing. What could that mean? Modern acousticians know that some materials, certain crystalline formations, water-filled chambers, or cavities under compression, can act as dampers, absorbing vibration rather than amplifying it. If the builders of Giza understood this, perhaps their underground architecture was designed to contain or regulate the Earth's resonance itself, to quiet what might otherwise grow unstable. The pyramids above, acting as counterweights or tuning forks, may have balanced the frequencies between sky and soil. Ancient myth is full of hints. The Egyptians spoke of Ma'at, balance, harmony, the eternal order of the cosmos. When Ma'at was lost, chaos returned. What if that concept was not merely moral or spiritual, but physical? What if the balance they guarded was literal, an equilibrium of planetary energy maintained through geometry? If so, then the hidden city beneath Giza was not a dwelling, but a stabilizer. A resonance engine buried to keep the world aligned. In 1992, seismologists measuring low-frequency tremors from distant earthquakes noticed something peculiar. The Giza plateau responded differently from surrounding terrain. Vibrations that should have dissipated instead echoed back with altered frequency, as though refracted by an internal structure. One scientist described it as acoustic memory within the bedrock. The data was archived, then forgotten, overshadowed by political turmoil. But the implication remains. Giza behaves like a constructed instrument even beneath its surface. If so, who built it, and when? Geologists such as Robert Schoch have shown that the Sphinx's body bears water erosion from a time when Egypt was lush, perhaps 12,000 years ago, the same era as the Younger Dryas cataclysm that ended the Ice Age. Across the world, other megalithic sites share similar signatures. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, now dated to 9600 BCE, built suddenly, fully formed, and then deliberately buried. No gradual development, no primitive precursors. Just a leap, a reappearance, as though knowledge returned briefly after a long silence. Could Giza be part of that same forgotten network? A remnant of pre-deluge architecture, designed to preserve something deeper than history itself? The priest-philosopher Manetho, writing in the 3rd century BCE, recorded an older Egyptian chronology that placed the reign of divine kings, the Nators, thousands of years before the first dynasties. He wrote that they ruled during a time when the stars were different. His account was dismissed as myth, yet astronomical software confirms that around 10,500 BCE, the stars of Orion aligned perfectly with the pyramid's layout. The same date appears again and again in Plato's account of Atlantis, in the Sumerian flood myths, in the melting of the ice sheets. Coincidence, perhaps. But in the language of ancient builders, repetition is intention. Somewhere beneath the sand, perhaps those intentions still resonate. Explorers who camped near the plateau's edge report hearing deep rumbles beneath their tents at night. Not seismic, but rhythmic, as though the earth were chanting in its sleep. Dogs refuse to go near certain fissures. Compasses spin erratically within a narrow radius. Local shepherds tell of birds that will not fly directly over the Great Pyramid at dusk. Science offers explanations, magnetic flux, thermal currents, yet none dispel the feeling that something immense and unseen lies below. Those who study the forbidden layers of Giza often face a different kind of resistance, not natural, but human. Permits vanish, research stalls, archives are sealed. The official stance remains unchanged. There are no significant structures beneath the plateau. Yet every new scan suggests otherwise. In 2017, an international team using cosmic ray tomography discovered a massive void above the Grand Gallery of the Great Pyramid, a space as large as an aircraft hangar, completely unknown until then. If such a chamber can exist unnoticed for millennia within the pyramid itself, how many more might sleep below it? There are hints in forgotten journals, notes by explorers from the early 19th century describing wells that seemed to descend without end, or staircases carved into stone that rang like bells when struck. In one rare account, a Coptic priest guiding an English traveler whispered that below the feet of the lion lies the ark of the first light. Though no one knows what he meant. Perhaps a relic, perhaps an idea. But the phrase, first light, echoes ancient texts that speak of a knowledge carried from an older world into this one. If the hidden city does exist, what would it reveal? Perhaps not golden idols or lost scriptures, but something far subtler. Technology made of sound, memory stored in resonance, mechanisms of stone that respond to thought itself. Such ideas belong to the realm of myth, yet quantum science edges closer to them every day. The universe, after all, is vibration. Information hums in every particle. The ancients may have known this intuitively, may have built their temples to harmonize with frequencies that sustain life. The city beneath Giza could be the ultimate expression of that harmony, a living archive written in vibration instead of language. But harmony can become silence. There is an unspoken fear among those who study such mysteries, that the reason we are forbidden to dig deeper is not to protect artifacts, but to prevent awakening. If those chambers once regulated planetary balance, disturbing them might destabilize what remains. The ancients, understanding cycles of destruction, may have sealed their instruments when the last catastrophe approached. To open them prematurely could be to repeat that fall. Yet the desert whispers otherwise. The wind that passes over the plateau carries faint tones, harmonics that shift with temperature, with the movement of stars, with the pulse of the Earth's magnetic field. Some call it coincidence. Others call it communication. Perhaps the builders left their language in frequency, knowing that only when human consciousness reattuned itself would the message be understood. To stand at Giza at midnight is to feel that possibility, to sense a correspondence between the silence of the stars and the quiet of the stone. The desert does not shout its truths. It murmurs them, waiting for those who can listen without expectation. If the lost city is real, it may not be buried in the way we imagine. It may exist in the overlap between matter and vibration, a realm both physical and energetic, the duat the ancients spoke of, the space between worlds. To reach it would require not excavation, but attunement, a resonance that bridges the gap between what we are and what we were. And perhaps, somewhere beneath the sands, that bridge still waits, a vast harmonic heart, still beating in silence, patient as eternity itself. When the stars of Orion cross the meridian and the desert turns black as obsidian, one can almost feel it, that tremor beneath the ground, that deep, slow rhythm older than civilization. It is not thunder, it is not wind, it is memory, stirring. And in that vibration, faint but unbroken, lies the promise that the city below has never been lost, only waiting for the world to remember its song. The night sky over Giza is not black, but a deep indigo, heavy with dust and the faint scent of ancient wind. From the top of the plateau, the lights of Cairo flicker like a mirage of another age, fragile and temporary. The pyramids remain unblinking, silhouettes carved from stillness, their edges tracing constellations that no longer match the modern sky. It is said that to look upon them long enough is to feel time unravel, that the air here carries not just history, but memory itself. Beneath that memory, the earth waits. When the first explorers lowered lamps into the descending shafts at Giza, they expected tombs, sarcophagi, mummies, hieroglyphs. Instead, they found geometry, angles without inscription, corridors that led not to chambers of death, but to resonant cavities of sound. The deeper they descended, the more the air seemed to vibrate, until words themselves dissolved. One diary, written by a French engineer in 1837, spoke of a pressure in the chest, as if the very stones were breathing. His candle flame, he wrote, moved without wind. It was dismissed as superstition, but centuries later, instruments confirmed what intuition had long whispered, that within these stones, sound behaves differently. In the 1990s, researchers from the Acoustical Society of America conducted controlled tests inside the Great Pyramid's Grand Gallery. They generated pure tones and measured their reverberations. The data revealed harmonic nodes precisely spaced along the gallery's length, forming what one physicist described as a standing wave corridor. These nodes matched the pyramid's internal proportions, suggesting that the builders tuned the chamber to specific frequencies. Those same frequencies, when converted into audible sound, corresponded to the fundamental tones of the human voice. Coincidence, perhaps, or perhaps intention. In ancient Egyptian ritual, the voice was not merely expression, it was creation. To speak was to shape. The gods did not build, they uttered. Thoth, the divine scribe, was said to have written reality into being through vibration. The priests of Heliopolis chanted hymns not for worship, but for resonance, to awaken the stones themselves. The pyramid, in that light, becomes a living instrument, and the hidden city beneath it, a vast receiver. Yet, if such a city exists, why does it remain sealed? Why has the earth itself conspired to keep it hidden? Some say it is protection, others, punishment. There are accounts, scattered, half-remembered, of intrusions into forbidden places. In 1938, local workers clearing sand near the Eastern Causeway reportedly broke through a hollow cavity. The opening was narrow, leading to a descending shaft that vanished into darkness. Within hours, authorities arrived, sealed the area, and ordered silence. No photographs, no public record. But among the workers, the story spread. They had heard a deep tone rising from below. Like a drum underwater, they fled. The site was buried again. To modern minds, such tales sound like folklore. Yet folklore often preserves what science overlooks, the emotional truth of an encounter with the unknown. If vibration underlies creation, then perhaps the earth itself reacts when disturbed. The drum underwater might have been nothing more than seismic resonance, or it might have been the pulse of something alive. Ancient Egyptians believed the underworld was not a place of punishment, but of renewal. The soul descended into darkness to be reborn into light. The gods of the Duat guarded secret gates, each representing a state of consciousness. To pass through them was to remember one's divine origin. The hidden city beneath Giza, then, could be more than physical. It could be an architectural map of initiation, built to mirror the soul's journey. In that sense, every chamber, every shaft, every tone would be symbolic and functional, a ritual in stone. The initiate would descend into darkness, stripped of identity, surrounded by resonant frequencies that dismantled the boundaries of self. In the silence between tones, he would meet the divine. Modern explorers may have stumbled into the same path unknowingly. Scientists walking through the geometry of transcendence, unaware that they were repeating an ancient rite. There is another layer to the mystery. Ancient texts refer to a chamber of mirrors beneath the lion, a hall where the sky is reflected within the earth. Some interpret this as poetry. Others suspect it describes an optical phenomenon. The underground city, if it exists, may contain surfaces polished to such precision that they reflect starlight channeled through shafts from above. If those mirrors were made of obsidian or quartz, They could also amplify electromagnetic fields, effectively merging light and sound into one resonant system. The ancients, it seems, pursued unity between matter and spirit, above and below, sound and light. Their monuments were not built to divide the sacred from the physical, but to remind humanity that both are the same. But if such knowledge once existed, why was it lost? Some say the loss was deliberate, a pact of preservation. When the last cataclysm approached, when the flood rose and the skies darkened, the keepers of the old world sealed their archives. They encoded their wisdom not in words, but in architecture, knowing that stone endures longer than parchment. They buried their instruments, their resonant cities, beneath deserts and mountains, waiting for a future civilization to rediscover the frequencies. Yet, as ages passed, humanity forgot not only the knowledge but the language to perceive it. The symbols that once vibrated with meaning became superstition. The tones that once healed became myth. The living resonance became dead stone. And still, something beneath Giza calls. In 2001, seismic monitoring during a minor earthquake recorded anomalous echoes beneath the plateau. The reflections came not from fractures, but from cavities, large, rectangular, metallic in resonance. The signal suggested hollow spaces filled with water or another dense medium. When the data reached the authorities, the instruments were quietly removed. Officially, it was due to equipment malfunction. The researchers who analyzed the data were reassigned. But one of them, writing anonymously years later, confessed that what they found did not behave like geology. He described a resonance that seemed to answer. To answer implies awareness. Could the city beneath Giza be more than a relic? Could it be an active mechanism, dormant yet responsive? A system designed to awaken under certain conditions? If the pyramids above are its transmitters, perhaps the right combination of celestial alignment and human consciousness could reactivate what sleeps below. The alignment of Orion's belt, Sirius, and the pyramids occurs cyclically every 26,000 years, the great year of precession. The last time it was perfect was around 10,500 BCE, the very period linked to the supposed golden age before the flood. That alignment will return again in the far future. Perhaps the monuments are not meant for us at all, but for another age yet to come, a signal set to echo across cosmic cycles. And so the desert waits. Even now, scientists continue to scan, to measure, to map. Every decade brings new technology, muon tomography, gravitational sensors, hyperspectral imaging, and with each advance, Giza resists revelation. It yields just enough to feed curiosity, then closes again. The plateau seems to possess its own will, as though the secret within chooses who may glimpse it. There are moments in the long hours before dawn when the horizon glows faintly with a light that does not belong to the city. Some say it is atmospheric distortion, others the reflection of unseen lightning over the desert. But among those who live closest to the plateau, there is a quieter explanation, that it is the breath of the old world, the memory of the first light escaping for a moment before sinking back into sleep. If that is true, then the lost city beneath Giza may not be a ruin of stone at all, but an intersection between worlds, between the seen and the unseen, the audible and the remembered. Its architecture may exist as vibration, manifesting only when harmony is restored between earth and sky. The ancients may have called it Zep Tepi, the first time not to describe the past, but a state of being, an eternal present waiting to be rediscovered. And when that harmony returns, perhaps the hum beneath the plateau will rise again, building until the stone itself begins to sing. The pyramids will vibrate with the same tone that once called stars into alignment, and the boundary between legend and history will dissolve. For now the desert holds its breath. The stars drift in slow procession above, indifferent yet precise. Somewhere beneath them, the lost city sleeps, dreaming in frequencies older than words, and the wind, moving softly across the sand, carries the faintest whisper, a reminder that not all things buried are dead. Some are only waiting to be heard. There are nights when the desert feels almost sentient, when the stillness becomes too deliberate, as if the earth itself were listening. The wind stops, the air cools, and the sky over Giza deepens into a velvet blue so dark it seems to swallow sound. On such nights, the pyramids do not look like human achievements at all. They seem alive, luminous from within, as though something beneath them is slowly stirring after an age of silence. It is easy, in that half-light, to imagine the plateau as more than stone, as an immense organism whose heart beats deep underground. And if that is true, then perhaps the stories of the hidden city are not inventions of dreamers, but echoes of a truth too vast for history to contain. In 1978, when American engineers first used seismic soundings beneath the Sphinx, they noted a persistent echo, a slow pulse returning from deep beneath the limestone, unlike any geological reflection they had measured before. It repeated in intervals, constant and low. Some described it as a subterranean rhythm. They could not identify its source. The data, when analyzed, suggested a chamber, not a void, but a cavity filled with something dense, possibly metallic. It should have been headline news. Instead, the results disappeared into the quiet bureaucracy of scientific archives, labeled as inconclusive. But silence, like sand, hides nothing forever. Rumors of the metallic chamber resurfaced decades later, when similar readings were detected by ground-penetrating radar near the same coordinates. These new anomalies seemed connected, like nodes along an invisible grid, stretching eastward from the Sphinx, beneath layers of sediment that no excavation has ever reached. Some researchers speculated that the pattern formed a vast geometric network, too precise to be accidental. Others called it noise, an illusion created by the interference of instruments. Yet those who stood on the site during the scans spoke of an uncanny sensation, a pressure in the air, a feeling that the ground itself was vibrating beneath their feet, as though the earth were breathing in time with some ancient rhythm. It is said that certain desert nights carry sound differently, that low frequencies travel for miles through the stone. Perhaps that is why the ancients built here, on this precise stretch of limestone bedrock, rich in quartz and iron, alive with resonance. The Great Pyramid stands like a frozen note in a cosmic scale, its angles capturing the geometry of vibration. Beneath it, the hidden city might be its echo, the deep chord that sustains the melody of the surface. If the pyramid is the instrument, then what is being played? Ancient myths speak of the gods shaping worlds through tone. The Memphite theology, one of Egypt's oldest surviving texts, describes the creator god Ptah forming the universe through thought and word. Creation, in that sense, was not an act of construction, but of resonance, the alignment of frequency and intention. When Ptah spoke, the world appeared. The builders of Giza, inheritors of that same cosmic philosophy, may have sought to replicate the divine act, to tune the earth itself into harmony with the stars. Some theorists argue that the pyramids and their subterranean counterparts form part of an enormous resonant network, a planetary instrument once used to stabilize or even energize the Earth's magnetic field. It sounds impossible, yet modern physics recognizes that the planet vibrates with Schumann resonances, electromagnetic frequencies created by lightning and atmospheric interaction. These frequencies fall near 7.83 Hertz, a tone remarkably close to the human brain's alpha rhythm, associated with calm, meditative states. Perhaps the ancients did not stumble upon this connection by accident. Perhaps they built to amplify it, to align consciousness and planet, human and cosmos, through vibration. The city beneath Giza, then, might not be a city in any familiar sense. It could be a harmonic engine, an array of chambers, corridors, and crystalline nodes that once resonated in unison, creating a frequency that sustained balance across the world. If that sounds like fantasy, consider this. Sound has been proven to shape matter. Cymatics, the study of vibration's effect on physical substances, shows that frequency alone can form perfect geometry, coaxing sand, water, or dust into intricate symmetrical patterns. What then might the Earth itself form when tuned by a civilization that understood sound not as art, but as structure? Ancient texts across cultures echo the same principle. The Vedic scriptures of India describe Shabda Brahman, the sound of creation. The Mayans spoke of Hunab Ku, the vibration that sustains all existence. In China, the philosopher Lao Tzu wrote that the Tao is soundless, yet it creates all sounds. Egypt called it Hika, the sacred resonance through which the divine manifests. All names for one truth, that reality is song, and every stone, every star, every thought is a note within it. Perhaps long before the first pharaoh raised his crown, another people learned to listen deeply enough to hear that cosmic music, and built their monuments not as temples of worship, but as tuning devices, aligning human intention with planetary frequency. But knowledge can be perilous. Legends from the Westcar Papyrus tell of a time when the priests of the horizon abused the secret tones, seeking to command rather than harmonize. Their actions unbalanced the order of Ma'at, the principle of cosmic equilibrium, and the world trembled. The gods withdrew their voices, the skies darkened, and the great flood came. Whether myth or memory, it tells of a fall, a severing between sound and soul. The city beneath Giza may have been sealed in that moment, its frequencies silenced to prevent further destruction. What happens then if those frequencies are reawakened? Modern technology has already begun to interact unknowingly with the Earth's resonances, satellites, power grids, radio waves, all pulsing across the same electromagnetic field. Some researchers have warned that interference on planetary scales could destabilize natural rhythms. Others suggest that the increase in global resonance, a measurable phenomenon, might be part of a larger reawakening. Could it be that the buried network beneath Giza is responding slowly to the hum of the modern world? There are reports, dismissed as superstition, of strange lights near the plateau, faint bluish glows flickering around the pyramid's apexes during electrical storms, even when no lightning strikes. Sensitive instruments record unexplained electromagnetic surges. To skeptics, these are coincidences, the tricks of weather and metal. But to those who listen, they sound like whispers, the faint, returning notes of a chord long buried. What if the city below is not entirely asleep? In 2009, a team from Cairo University detected low-frequency vibrations beneath the plateau that pulsed independently of any seismic event. The data was consistent with something deep underground releasing energy. It lasted nearly 12 hours, then stopped. The team described it cautiously as a geomagnetic anomaly. The report was quietly shelved. But for those who believe in the lost city, it was confirmation. Something beneath Giza is alive, responding, waiting. The human mind has always sought thresholds, the places where the visible world touches the invisible. Temples, mountains, caverns, pyramids, all built or chosen as meeting points between earth and eternity. If the hidden city beneath Giza is one such threshold, then perhaps its purpose was not to store history, but to guard it, to preserve the memory of humanity's forgotten harmony until we could once again hear the music that shaped us. And maybe that time is near. Across the world, ancient sites are awakening, not literally, but energetically. Scientists record magnetic fluctuations near megalithic structures, unexplained acoustic phenomena within stone circles, changes in resonance patterns beneath sacred mountains. It is as if the Earth's old architecture is responding to something, perhaps to us. Humanity, for the first time in millennia, is learning to listen again, to vibration, to energy, to consciousness itself. If that is true, then the lost city of Giza is not a relic, but a participant, a sleeping tone in the planet's great chord, beginning once more to hum. When the alignment of stars returns, when our minds quiet enough to perceive the language of resonance, perhaps the city will rise again, not from sand, but from silence. Until then, the plateau waits, its secrets pressed into stone, its corridors sealed by time and intent. The wind carries fragments of forgotten frequencies, whispers that echo through the darkened chambers of the imagination. Somewhere beneath the lion's paws, beneath layers of limestone and myth, the earth holds its breath. And if one listens carefully enough, beyond the noise of reason, beyond the hum of civilization, one might still hear it, the faint, rhythmic pulse of a buried heart, beating beneath the sand, steady as eternity. There are moments on the Giza plateau when the line between history and dream fades, when the desert glows with a strange inner light, neither dawn nor dusk, as though the sands themselves remember the sun that once shone upon another age. In that light, the pyramids appear not as relics, but as sentinels, guardians of a secret deeper than civilization. The air hums faintly, and for an instant one feels that the world has stopped turning, that time itself is listening. The ancients said that memory is eternal, but consciousness forgets. The monuments of Giza may be the Earth's attempt to remember what humanity has lost, an architecture of recall, built to withstand the tides of amnesia. And beneath them, if the legends are true, the lost city may still be keeping vigil, a repository of sound, light, and intention, waiting for a civilization capable of understanding its language once more. In the early 2000s, archaeologists revisiting earlier excavation notes stumbled upon references to an unexplored corridor beneath the Great Pyramid's northern base. The entry dated back to 1839, when British engineers dug trial shafts during an early restoration. They recorded a faint echo when striking the bedrock, a hollow resonance that suggested a cavity below. Lacking equipment to explore further, They sealed it and moved on. 2 centuries later, modern radar confirmed their intuition. A void exists exactly where they marked it, extending westward in a perfect line toward the plateau's core. Its dimensions are vast, large enough to house an entire temple. Official statements described it simply as an architectural mystery. No further excavation has been authorized. Perhaps the hesitation is not purely academic. For every discovery beneath Giza seems to carry a tremor of unease, as if revealing one layer of truth disturbs something that would rather remain buried. Workers on late-night shifts report hearing sounds, low, resonant tones that rise and fade without pattern. Seismographs pick up subtle micro-vibrations even when the air is still. Instruments malfunction near the same coordinates where the anomalies are strongest. One engineer, interviewed anonymously, said he felt as if the ground was breathing beneath us. The ancients might have understood this differently. To them, the earth was alive. Its mountains were bones, its rivers blood, its breath the wind. The pyramids, in this world view, were not monuments upon the body of the earth, but organs within it. The Great Pyramid, aligned precisely with magnetic north, could be seen as the planet's heart, the point where celestial and terrestrial energies converge. The hidden chambers below would then be arteries, conduits of resonance carrying the pulse of creation deeper into the ground. It is tempting to dismiss such metaphors as romantic. Yet physics now confirms what the mystics always suspected. Vibration and structure are inseparable. The Earth hums with frequencies known as microseisms, natural oscillations that ring like a planetary heartbeat. They are too deep for human hearing, but can be measured by instruments. These tones shape the behavior of weather, water, and even biological rhythms. The ancients may have sensed this intuitively, building in harmony with it rather than against it. If so, the lost city beneath Giza was not superstition, but science, a living laboratory of resonance and consciousness. Some researchers have suggested that the geometry of the pyramids encodes not only astronomical knowledge, but harmonic ratios. The relationship between their height, base, and angle mirrors the proportions found in musical scales and atomic structures. In the sacred geometry of ancient Egypt, these proportions were not decoration, but law, the mathematics of balance that sustains both cosmos and spirit. Beneath the surface, then, the hidden city may follow the same pattern. Chambers arranged like notes in a chord, each one resonating at a frequency tuned to the Earth's own vibration. But if such harmony once existed, what silenced it? The myths speak of upheaval, of the flood that ended the first time, Zep Tepi. In one fragmentary text preserved in the temple of Edfu, the gods lament that the sound of the earth was broken. It describes the waters rising with fire beneath, an image eerily reminiscent of volcanic cataclysm or crustal shift. Geologists now recognize that around 12,000 years ago, the planet experienced sudden climate chaos, floods, earthquakes, cometary impacts. Entire coastlines vanished. In that destruction, civilizations could easily have been erased. Perhaps Giza's builders foresaw it. Perhaps they built downward, seeking to preserve not bodies, but frequency itself, the memory of a balanced world encoded in vibration. Modern evidence continues to whisper that something vast lies below. Satellite gravimetry, the measurement of minute variations in Earth's gravitational field, reveals a dense anomaly beneath Giza's limestone crust. The readings suggest a mass unlike any natural formation. It is as if an immense structure of different material lies hidden, shielded by layers of sediment. Some propose it is simply denser rock. Others wonder if it might be the remnants of ancient technology, a lattice of quartz and metal designed to conduct energy. No one knows, because no one is allowed to dig. Perhaps the prohibition is born of caution. There is an old superstition among Egyptian workers that to disturb the sleeping ground of Giza invites misfortune. It is not about curses or spirits, but about respect, the awareness that these stones hold something beyond comprehension. When they speak of baraka, they mean the energy that lives in sacred places, the power that hums through matter when intention meets geometry. To excavate blindly would be to awaken it without understanding. In 2015, a team from France and Japan discovered another void above the Grand Gallery using muon tomography, a particle imaging technique that peers through stone. The space was massive, nearly 30 meters long. Its purpose remains unknown. If such a chamber can remain hidden within the pyramid itself for 4,000 years, how many more could rest unseen beneath? Each new revelation deepens the mystery rather than solves it, like peeling back layers of a dream only to find the dreamer still asleep. One wonders what would happen if the buried network were ever reactivated, if the frequencies that once moved through its corridors were restored. Some believe it would heal the earth, rebalancing magnetic fields, restoring harmony to weather and water. Others fear it could unleash forces long restrained. In either case, the knowledge seems both gift and burden. Perhaps that is why it was hidden, not to be lost, but to be protected from misuse. There are legends, older than any empire, that speak of a covenant between the builders and the earth. They were said to be listeners, not rulers, beings who could hear the planet's voice and build in accordance with its rhythm. Their downfall came when they sought to control what should only be harmonized. The flood was not punishment but consequence, the dissonance of a world out of tune. Giza, in this sense, is both monument and warning. The modern world no longer listens. It measures, extracts, and names, but it rarely hears. We dig for proof while the answers hum beneath our feet. Perhaps that is why the secret of Giza remains veiled, because knowledge without reverence becomes noise, and noise can destroy what silence once protected. Some nights, when the wind drifts from the west, one can hear faint tones near the plateau, so low they border on silence. Musicians who have recorded them describe a pattern of harmonics that aligns with the 432 Hertz scale, the same frequency said to match the natural resonance of the earth. Coincidence? Again, or memory resurfacing through stone. It is almost as if the buried city is trying to communicate, to remind the living world of what it once knew. That sound is the bridge between matter and spirit, and that creation itself hums through the bones of the earth. Maybe that is the true meaning of the forbidden history. Not a conspiracy of men, but a concealment chosen by nature itself. The knowledge was never erased. It was absorbed. The desert keeps it not as a secret, but as a song too vast for modern ears. If we could hear it fully, if we could stand in stillness long enough for that buried tone to reach our hearts, perhaps we would remember that the lost city beneath Giza was never truly lost. It is us who have been wandering above it, deaf to its rhythm, blind to its light. And one day, when the resonance returns, when humanity once again aligns with the hum of the planet, The sands may shift, not by hand or machine, but by frequency. The hidden chambers will open, not as doors, but as echoes, and the earth will sing the song it has been holding in its breath for 12,000 years. Until then, the pyramids keep watch, their shadows falling across centuries like clock hands carved in stone. The wind moves between them softly, carrying dust and memory. The stars turn overhead, slow and unending, reflecting in the black eye of the Sphinx. And somewhere beneath, in the deep silence that no light has touched, the city sleeps, dreaming in frequencies of gold and shadow, waiting for the moment when the world above will finally learn to listen again. There is a silence at Giza that no sound can truly break. Even the voices of tourists fade into the wind, swallowed by a stillness that seems to emanate from the stone itself. It is not emptiness, but presence, a silence so dense it feels like listening to time. When one stands between the pyramids under a cloudless sky, it becomes impossible to think of them as monuments. They are not dead architecture, but living equations. Each angle, each face, each shadow belongs to a rhythm too vast to hear. By daylight, the plateau is a mirage of certainty. Guides speak of pharaohs and dynasties. The sun paints the limestone in gold, and history feels linear. But at night, that illusion dissolves. The desert breathes, the stars wheel in their ancient order, and a thought rises unbidden that perhaps none of what we call ancient has ever truly passed. Perhaps the past is not behind us, but beneath us, waiting. The myth of the hidden city beneath Giza persists because it feels inevitable. The Great Pyramid is a paradox too perfect for its own story. Its stones speak of engineering that should not exist for its age. Its chambers echo with frequencies modern science is only beginning to understand. Its alignments with stars, solstices, and planetary nodes defy coincidence. And beneath it, the ground returns echoes no geologist can explain, patterns too deliberate, too symmetrical to be natural. In 2010, new magnetometric surveys detected unexplained conductivity beneath the pyramid's eastern foundation, a signature typical of metals, not limestone. The discovery was dismissed as modern contamination from iron tools. Yet the same pattern appeared in 3 separate readings, aligned with the same orientation as the pyramid itself. When asked about the anomaly, one scientist replied carefully, "Either there is a man-made chamber under there, or nature has learned geometry." But perhaps the distinction between man and nature is the very illusion Giza was built to dissolve. Ancient texts describe the pyramid as a mirror of heaven, not a metaphor, but a statement of function. The Egyptians believed the earth and sky were twin reflections of a single truth, the macrocosm and microcosm intertwined. Every monument mirrored a constellation, every temple a star. The pyramid's alignment with Orion's belt was more than astronomical. It was philosophical. To them, the stars were not distant. They were the eternal form of the soul. The city beneath Giza, if it exists, may be the inverse of the heavens above, a map of the cosmos carved into the flesh of the earth. To descend into such a place would not be exploration. It would be remembrance. In one apocryphal account from the 1920s, a French scholar claimed to have found a sealed shaft beneath the Sphinx's enclosure, hidden by centuries of sand. He wrote of narrow steps leading downward into a chamber lined with polished black stone that reflected torchlight like liquid glass. At the center stood a block of crystal emitting faint luminescence. The air was so still, he said. It felt alive. The journal ends abruptly. The next page is blank. No one ever found the shaft again. The story was buried with him, dismissed as fantasy. Yet every now and then, a detail from another expedition, a collapsed tunnel, a hollow beneath the paws, a vibration from below, revives the rumor. Perhaps the truth is not that these stories are false, but that they describe something that cannot be seen by ordinary sight. The hidden city may not exist in our dimension of solidity at all, but in a liminal state, a resonance between matter and energy, where geometry and frequency meet. The ancients called such places gates of becoming. It is possible that Giza was designed as one vast gate. Every measurement of the Great Pyramid encodes ratios of the Earth itself, its circumference, its axis, the distance to the Sun. But those same numbers also appear in atomic physics, in light harmonics, in musical scales. It is as if the builders sought to weave a bridge between the infinitely large and the infinitely small, binding the human world to the structure of the universe. The city beneath, in this view, would be the foundation of that bridge, a harmonic counterpart anchored in the planet's heart. Together, surface and depth would complete the equation of creation. In 2018, while studying the Great Pyramid's electromagnetic properties, researchers at ITMO University in St. Petersburg modeled how it interacts with radio waves. Their simulations revealed that the pyramid concentrates energy within its internal chambers and beneath its base, amplifying electromagnetic fields in specific patterns. The geometry itself acts as a focusing lens. The findings were purely theoretical. The scientists had no metaphysical agenda, yet their conclusion echoed what ancient texts had said all along. The pyramid is not passive. It is active. And if the structure above amplifies energy, then what of the one below? Some theorists believe the hidden city could be a resonant counterpart, an inverted pyramid or network of chambers designed to balance the flow of energy between heaven and earth. The forbidden nature of its excavation might not be superstition at all, but preservation. Disturbing the equilibrium could disrupt the very harmony it was built to maintain. To imagine such a possibility is to glimpse an order far beyond modern comprehension. A planetary architecture in which temples are not separate from geology, and human consciousness is not separate from the cosmos. In this vision, the pyramids are tuning forks, and humanity is both musician and instrument. The lost city would be the Earth's memory of that song, stored in the dark until we learn again how to sing it. There are moments, even now, when the silence beneath Giza seems to hum. Sensitive instruments pick up subsonic frequencies that shift with the moon's position. Seismographs have recorded rhythmic pulses corresponding to tidal oscillations in the Nile's underground aquifers. It is as though the desert and the river converse, a dialogue of water and stone, movement and stillness. Perhaps the builders heard this dialogue and shaped their monuments to respond. The hidden city might be the resonance chamber of that conversation, a place where the Earth's frequencies and human intention converge. Across cultures, we find echoes of this idea. The Tibetan monks speak of hidden realms accessible through vibration. The Shambhala, a city of enlightenment beneath the mountains. The Hopi tell of the ant people who sheltered humanity underground during the flood. The Sumerians wrote of Eridu, the first city, built by gods who emerged from the deep, In every myth, there is a descent, a journey below the surface to rediscover what was forgotten. Giza's lost city could be the origin of them all, the archetype of the descent, encoded in stone. And perhaps the true meaning of the forbidden lies not in secrecy, but in readiness. The ancients may have known that the knowledge stored below could not simply be seen. It had to be understood. The city would open not to curiosity, but to consciousness. It would remain invisible until humanity once again vibrated at the frequency of remembrance. The signs of that awakening are subtle. Around the world, ancient sites long dormant seem to resonate again, earthquakes aligning with solstices, auroras intensifying over geomagnetic nodes, instruments detecting harmonic anomalies at sacred coordinates. Scientists see data, mystics see return. Both, perhaps, are right. For if everything in creation is vibration, then awakening is not an event, it is a resonance. The lost city beneath Giza may not rise from sand and shadow, but from within us, when our own frequency matches its forgotten song. Until then, the silence endures. At midnight the wind slows, and the plateau glows faintly in the starlight. The pyramids stand immovable, their shadows stretching into eternity. Somewhere beneath them, the last secret of the earth remains untouched, not by ignorance but by design. The sand shifts in its sleep, the stars tilt a little closer, and in that stillness, that ancient, trembling stillness, one might almost hear it, the first note of the song that made the world, waiting to be sung again. The wind at Giza tastes of dust and eternity. It drifts through the fissures between the stones like a whisper that never quite becomes words. By day, it sounds ordinary, just air moving through heat. But at night, it changes. It lowers in pitch, deepens, and becomes something else entirely. A resonance that hums at the edge of perception, the faint pulse of a world remembering itself. Perhaps this is how all endings begin, not with revelation, but with vibration. For centuries, humanity has tried to unearth the secret of Giza, to dig through sand and legend in search of proof. But what if proof was never meant to be found in the soil? What if the truth of the lost city was never buried, but simply withdrawn, folded into silence, waiting for the human ear to grow quiet enough to hear it again? Every civilization that has touched this plateau has left behind fragments, hieroglyphs, myths, and warnings. The dynastic Egyptians called the place Ta-Kent, the land of the beginning. They built temples beside the pyramids as if trying to imitate an older perfection. The Greeks saw in it the shadow of their own myths, a reflection of Atlantis. The Arabs, arriving centuries later, called it Al-Haram al-Akbar, the Great Sanctuary, believing the pyramids to be tombs of the prophets who came before Noah's flood. And in every telling, one theme repeats, that beneath the surface lies something hidden, a place where the first light of the world still sleeps. No matter how the story changes, the tone remains the same. Reverence mixed with fear, because to uncover the origin of the pyramids is to uncover the origin of consciousness itself. The deeper one studies the site, the more Giza resembles not an object, but a system, an intricate conversation between geometry, frequency, and consciousness. The Great Pyramid is its heart, but the plateau is its body, and the buried city its soul. Together, they form a single structure that appears solid, but is, in essence, a harmonic instrument. The ancient builders were not architects, as we understand the term. They were composers, They built in sound. Evidence of this echoes in fragments scattered through time. The hieroglyphic symbol for the pyramid was not merely a triangle. It was an image of ascent, of light rising from matter. The texts that survive from the Old Kingdom describe the pharaoh not as a god by birth, but as one who became light through resonance. The process of death, in their view, was not decay, but frequency shift, a tuning from the material to the eternal. If the hidden city beneath Giza exists, it may have served as the final stage of that transformation, a resonant chamber through which the soul attuned itself to the vibration of the cosmos. In the early 20th century, archaeologist Selim Hassan unearthed an unusual tunnel beneath the causeway connecting the Sphinx temple to the pyramid of Khafra. It descended for nearly 40 meters before abruptly ending in a sealed wall. When workers struck the stone, it rang like bronze. The wall was left untouched. Hassan wrote, "It is as if the passage protects something that must not be awakened." His report, though publicly available, received little attention. The shaft was later reburied under restorations. Some say the tone of the wall was no ordinary resonance, but a warning, a frequency barrier. Such details, scattered like grains of truth, suggest that the ancients used sound not merely as ceremony, but as architecture. Modern experiments have shown that specific frequencies can levitate small stones, alter molecular structures, and even induce trance states. Imagine what might happen in a chamber the size of a temple, designed precisely to focus such vibrations. Perhaps the city beneath Giza is not made of rooms and corridors at all, but of resonance fields, invisible architecture sculpted by tone. If that is true, then the search for the lost city has been misguided from the beginning. The explorers looked for walls when they should have listened for harmonies. They sought foundations in matter when they should have sought coherence in sound. In that light, forbidden history takes on a new meaning. It is not history suppressed by governments or priests, but by dissonance, by the noise of our own fragmented minds. We have drowned out the frequencies that once connected us to the earth. The city did not vanish. We stopped vibrating in its range. Still, the earth remembers. Seismologists have long known that the Giza plateau resonates at an unusually low frequency, roughly 12 Hertz, a range that interacts directly with human brainwaves associated with intuition and altered consciousness. It is possible that the ancient builders chose this location not for aesthetics or astrology, but because of this natural vibration. They may have discovered that the human mind, when synchronized with the planet's frequency, becomes a kind of receiver, capable of perceiving the deeper structure of reality. The pyramids above and the chambers below would thus be amplifiers of that connection, instruments of communion between human and earth. If so, then the legend of the Hall of Records is not literal. It is not a library of scrolls sealed in stone. It is the earth itself, its magnetic field, its crystalline memory, its vast harmonic data stored in vibration. The ancients may have known how to access it directly through consciousness. They built monuments not to preserve knowledge, but to teach humanity how to listen to it again. And perhaps, in some way, we already are. In recent years, researchers studying the effects of meditation and sound therapy have discovered that when human brainwaves enter deep coherence, particularly in states of compassion or awe, the electromagnetic field around the heart synchronizes with the Schumann resonances of the planet. In that moment, body and earth vibrate as one. The ancient priests may have achieved this deliberately, using chants, stones, and geometry to guide the initiate into resonance. The city beneath Giza could have been their greatest instrument, a tuning fork of consciousness that bridged the worlds of matter and spirit. But what happens when a world forgets how to listen? When noise replaces silence and progress drowns out reverence? The resonance fades. The frequencies fall dormant. The gates close. That, perhaps, is the true meaning of the fall of man. Not exile from a garden, but dissonance from the earth's harmony. The flood was not just water. It was the washing away of coherence, the loss of the tone that bound all things together. The city beneath Giza was sealed not by sand, but by silence. And yet silence is not death. It is waiting. Some physicists have speculated that consciousness itself may operate as a quantum resonance field, that memory, emotion, and thought leave measurable imprints upon the fabric of space. If so, then every act of wonder at Giza, every prayer whispered into the wind, adds another layer to the resonance. The city below may awaken not through excavation, but through remembrance. Each person who stands before the pyramids in awe, who listens rather than measures, contributes to the retuning. The song of the earth is rebuilding itself through human hearts. In this sense, perhaps the forbidden history was never meant to remain hidden. Perhaps it was meant to be rediscovered only when humanity became capable of reverence again, when knowledge could once more serve balance instead of dominance. The guardians of Giza, whether human or otherwise, understood that truth without wisdom is peril. So they buried wisdom within beauty, encoded it in silence, and trusted the future to hear it when ready. And maybe that time is near. Each new discovery, each anomaly, each hum, each unexplainable glow feels less like chance and more like invitation. The sands shift as if restless. The air vibrates differently. Technology, for all its arrogance, has begun to reveal what ancient myth already knew, that energy, matter, and consciousness are one. The more we look, the more the old truths emerge, disguised as new science. One day, perhaps soon, the city beneath Giza will no longer be a mystery, but when it returns, it will not be through excavation. It will rise through recognition, through the human ability to remember that sound creates form, that silence is alive, that the earth is not inert, but conscious. And when that understanding dawns again, the hum beneath the plateau will grow louder, the sand will tremble, the frequencies of stone and star will align once more. The lost city will awaken, not as a ruin, but as a living chord, resounding through time. Then, maybe, humanity will finally understand that what was hidden was never meant to be owned, only harmonized with. The Great Pyramid will cease to be a riddle, and the Sphinx will no longer guard but welcome. The desert will sing its memory aloud. Until that moment, Giza remains what it has always been, a threshold between worlds, between epochs, between silence and song. The wind moves again. The stars burn faintly above the stone. Somewhere beneath, the earth hums its patient refrain, and the city sleeps within it, waiting for the vibration of recognition that will one day turn silence into music once more.